Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you're all safe and well wherever you are. My name is Michelle Fox, and I'm on the leadership team of the SEA. And I wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So before we start, I wanted to recommend changing your view option. So the most optimal way to view this webinar is to go to the top of your screen, and where it says view options, you'll see a drop-down menu, and I recommend clicking side-by-side view. So this enables you to see the entire presentation without seeing the speaker's face on top of it. So again, go to view options and side-by-side view. All right, now we've got that out of the way. Next slide, please. So in case this is your first meeting, I wanted to introduce you to the Sustainable Event Alliance. The SEA was founded in 2009 and is now a global affiliation of organizations, events, and individuals focused on improving the sustainability outcomes of events. So there's many benefits to becoming an SEA member, including building community, professional development, access to our supplier database, and a lot more. Annual membership costs $100, but we understand it's a tough time right now for everybody. So there are opportunities to become an SEA member by doing a little work for the SEA. So we will waive the membership fee for you. Contact me directly at fox.michelle@gmail.com if you're interested in becoming a member of the SEA, or you can go directly to the SEA website. Great, so before we get to our panelists, I wanted to introduce you to Suzanne Morel. She's on the leadership team of the SEA. Suzanne, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Suzanne Morel. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I have a sustainable event company here in Washington. And we're really excited that we're growing the C hubs, specifically in New York and D.C. here in North America. And we're really looking forward to providing everyone with some wonderful programming in the future. So again, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Suzanne. And now I want to introduce you to Michael Sear. He is in the New York SEA, our New York SEA. So Michael?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm so happy to see how many people are here today. I'm glad to be part of this group. I'm co-founder of Cup Zero. It's a reusable cup service based in New York. We work with events, festivals, venues to provide a reusable system for the drinkware. I know it's a bit of a crazy time now, but I think with this group, we're going to come out stronger and more sustainable in the end. So glad to be here.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Now to today's meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're really grateful to share some incredible experts in the field of sustainable events with you. And we have gone coast to coast today. Tonight, our speakers are sitting in New York, Dallas, San Diego, and Los Angeles. After each speaker, we're going to have time for Q&A. So please make sure to put your questions in the Q&A chat box. And please don't be shy. We want as much interaction as possible. All right, so next slide, please. Our first speaker is Ames. Ali is the Director of Sustainability for 3 Squares, Inc., an award-winning sustainability consulting firm and one of the first in the world to achieve ISO 2012-1 certification. In this role, she has led sustainability strategy and implementation efforts for clients ranging from the DNC to the UN Foundation to the LA Marathon. She also serves as the director of the Women in Green Forum, an annual event that brings together the world's most influential environmental trailblazers to showcase women's leadership in the field. And with that, I give you to Ames.
Thank you, Michelle. Could we go to the next slide? Great. Hi, everyone. As Michelle said, my name is Ames. I am the Director of Sustainability for 3 Squares Inc. Today, I'm going to be talking to you for the next couple minutes about our work serving as the head of sustainability for the Global Climate Action Summit. Next slide, please. So first, I'd like to give you a quick overview of who we are at 3 Squares Inc. and what we do. So we are an environmental consulting firm based in Los Angeles, California, and we work with a wide variety of organizations to implement sustainability strategies. We develop and implement strategies for large-scale events. We also work with government agencies, corporations, nonprofits, and others to develop their sustainability strategies. And we also lead climate action expeditions, where we take small groups of influencers to climate hotspots around the world, such as Greenland, so that they can learn more about the climate crisis and understand how they can bring climate action back to their own networks. We were the head of sustainability for the Democratic National Convention for the past 4 cycles, including in Denver in 2008, Charlotte in 2012, Philadelphia in 2016, and now we're working for Milwaukee this year in 2020. We were also the first firm in the US to achieve ISO 20121 compliance. We've implemented on all 7 continents, yes, including Antarctica, and our sustainability materials have been translated into 13 languages. Our clients range from Al Gore's The Climate Reality Project, to Nike, to Honda, to Louis Vuitton, to UN Foundation. So we're used to working with all different types of groups to implement best-in-class sustainability practices. Next slide, please. So now that you know a little bit about who we are, I'm going to take you through a case study for our work on the Global Climate Action Summit. So the Global Climate Action Summit was an event that took place in September 2018. It was an initiative of Governor Jerry Brown, and it brought together over 3,000 delegates from around the world to San Francisco, where as representatives for heads of states or large corporations or nonprofits, as well as community activists, researchers, and academics, they all came together to move on the momentum from the Paris Agreement and make their own climate action commitments for their respective groups. We were lucky to serve as Director of Sustainability for the event, and I'm gonna give you a couple of quick highlights of what we did in that role. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, we developed our strategy around the ISO 20121 framework. And I'm sure most of you know on this call that ISO 20121 is the Event Sustainability Management Standard. So the Global Climate Action Summit was very proud to achieve the world's first third-party certification to the standard. Now, what does third-party certification mean? So as 3 Squares Inc. developing and implementing the strategy, we were the first party. Then we had an auditor that reviewed all of our documentation, as well as came and did in-person interviews with event stakeholders, ranging from other members of the production team, to caterers, to venue leads, to other vendors, to ensure that those strategies were being communicated and actually implemented for the event. And then there was an auditor auditing the auditor as the third party, making sure that the entire audit process was done correctly. And so there was a huge amount of effort that was put into getting this certification, but we are really proud to have achieved the world's first in this. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to take you into a couple of the strategies we use to implement the sustainability strategy. So first, we had a comprehensive waste minimization and recovery strategy in place. The first step in this was working with event producers, vendors, venue leads, and caterers to design waste out of the event. Once we did that, in order to deal with any remaining waste, including things that could have been brought in from attendees, we had a 3-bin collection system for collecting compost, recycling, and landfill items. This system was in place at all of the official venues for the event throughout the city. So as attendees moved from a venue to venue, they saw the same system in place. At key venues, we also activated a Green Team volunteer corps, where Green Team volunteers, such as the lovely ladies featured in this picture, stood next to these 3 bin stations and served as educational ambassadors, where they helped attendees understand what items should go in what stream. And then we also employed a robust donation strategy, where excess materials from the event were donated to local community organizations from around San Francisco following the conclusion of the event. Through this strategy, we were able to achieve a 90% waste diversion rate. Next slide, please. We also employed a robust sustainability policy for all procurement for the event. That included ordering signage that was printed by local and green certified union printers on eco substrates such as falcon board. It also included featuring sustainable decor items, like having 100% living plants in the decor in lieu of cut flowers, as cut flowers are often flown in from overseas and have a higher transportation footprint. All of our living plants were also San Francisco native plants. They were drought tolerant, and following the event, they were donated to San Francisco Carbon Fund sites. Next slide, please. For catering, we worked with all of the chefs at each venue to develop menus that were 75% vegetarian, and also had 75% of their ingredients coming from within a 200-mile radius of the venue. Additionally, all of our catering service throughout the event used 0 disposables, meaning that food was served on reusable plates, glasses, silverware, and with cloth napkins. Next slide, please. Additionally, our transportation plan included a 100% zero-emission vehicle fleet. What that meant is that any transportation provided by the event for attendees, speakers, staff, or production were in 100% zero-emission vehicles. Also, all attendees of the event were given free access to electric bikes and scooters throughout San Francisco. And on top of that, in order to promote these services to the wider public, we worked with these organizations to have a free ride day for the entire city of San Francisco, where anybody in the city, regardless of whether they were attending the event or not, could access those electric bikes and scooters for free, understanding how they might be able to incorporate them into their daily commutes and routines. Next slide, please. And that was just a super quick overview of some of our key sustainability highlights from the Global Climate Action Summit, but I would welcome any questions you have.
Great, thank you so much, Allie. That was incredible. In case you're joining us late, I just wanted to recommend to everyone to go to the top of your screen on View Options and the drop-down menu, click Side-by-Side View. It's a great way for you to see the entire presentation, and the speakers are on the right. So now I'd love to bring some questions to Allie, and I'm waiting for the Q&A to light up because we'd love to hear from you. Anyone? No questions yet. Oh, here we go. Okay. What did you do for AV? Was there something more sustainable that you could make happen with that?
Yeah, sure. So we work closely with every aspect of the production team, including AV, to do things like employ a power down policy, ensuring that all equipment was turned off when not in use, and especially between days. Also making sure that, as I'm sure many of you know, AV teams go through a ton of batteries. So making sure that there was a battery collection and electronic waste recycling bin set up at any AV location.
Awesome. Do you know of any other events pursuing ISO certifications?
Yeah, there are lots of other events that pursue ISO certification. What we're proud of with Global Climate Action Summit is that we were the first to achieve third party. However, lots of other organizations, from World Sailing to, I know Gucci this year had their fashion show be ISO 20121 certified. So really across industries, the certification is being pursued.
Great. And for the Gucci fashion show, which fashion week was that?
I believe that was Paris. Don't
Awesome.
quote me on this. I believe it was Paris Fashion Week of 2019.
Sounds amazing. Okay, what would you say is the main takeaway for anyone looking to green events in the future post-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, so regarding the COVID angle, I think that one of the things we're going to have to focus on is the question of disposables, because there's a lot of discussion about moving away from bulk options to individually packaged items, into items that are disposable and can thrown away afterwards, not reused. So I think that's one of the big questions. There's always a solution to whatever sustainability problem you're looking to solve with an event, including if you're looking to have a catering service on all disposables. You can do things like looking for compostable options, although I would recommend that if looking to serve on any compostable items, check with your local compost facility where they would be hauled to ensure that they accept those items.
Thank you. And I have one more question, or it's more of a comment. I think that Free Ride Day was amazing, that you really incorporated this into the city and, you know, really helped all the people that didn't attend the event. Free ride, you know, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So as part of any good sustainability strategy, your goal should be to leave a positive legacy on the venues and your host city. It's not just attendees that are affected by your event. It's people working at the venues, it's people who live in the area or who commute through the area. So you have to think about how any of your footprint impacts them and how you can leave a positive legacy for them. And so partnering with these local organizations to have a free ride day was just one of the partnerships that we could develop to really bring that mission to life. And the other thing is that just reaching out to organizations to ask about these types of things is really the first step you need to take. A lot of them are interested in partnering with large scale or high profile events already and having their name attached to it, as well as having their name attached to this really positive story that can come out of it.
Thank you. Allie, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. And we will call you back at the end for the final Q&A. Okay,
great,
Suzanne. Yeah, Adam, I saw you just raise your hand, and but we'll definitely get back to your question at the end. Okay, thank you so much. Our next speaker, and Michael, if you could bring up Meghan Tierney. So Meghan started her career in sustainable business and sports at Arizona State University, where she received her Master of Sustainable Solutions. She joined the Kilowatt 1 division of Kilowatt Events in 2019, the award-winning sustainability branch of the event production firm based in Southern California. She sets out to bring purpose to all productions by tackling pertinent environmental and social issues with an eye towards the fundamental business drivers for all stakeholders. At Kilowatt, Meghan has helped implement comprehensive sustainability programs for large live events such as the ESPY Awards, KAABOO Del Mar, and College Football Playoff. So with that, I will give the floor directly to Meghan.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you everybody for joining us today. You can head to the next slide. As Michelle said, Kilowatt Events is a full-service event production company specializing in live, frequently televised events. You can actually head to the next slide. And as Michelle mentioned, I am in the Kilowatt 1 division, which is the sustainability arm of the company. and we focus on tackling the environmental footprint and social impacts of our temporary experiences. Next slide, please. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk us through an overview of how we go about powering event sustainability. And we do this with a systems thinking approach that you see the outline of here. There are 6 main phases that we apply to our programs, that they are both strategic and results driven in order to maximize value. Next slide, please. In the first phase, we establish a legacy. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that I don't think that events alone will save the world, but they do have the ability to harness a great power in behavior change. And that is something that we will need to save the world. So in our first phase, establishing a legacy, this is really where the foundation is. We want to understand the vision for the event and the unique interests and needs of the host community, as well as any other stakeholders. Sustainable operations, it's pretty endless what your options are to implement. And so by looking at the legacy we want to leave, we're able to really maximize the potential positive impact of our events. Once you do establish what your on-site operations will be, it's important to not only implement, but focus on what your education and awareness pieces are going to be. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing something great, but you're not communicating that to your attendees and your staff, then you're really missing out on a huge impact piece. And that's where the behavior change and the legacy lies. So if you look at the examples that we have on the slide, if waste sorting is an on-site initiative that you have, an example legacy might be that you're going to establish what the new expectation could be for landfill diversion in that host community. And the associated behavior change could be, your goal could be increased recycling and composting amongst attendees, that hopefully there's a chance that they bring that into their day-to-day. Similarly, if you're looking to decrease your carbon footprint as an on-site initiative, your legacy could be a local carbon offset initiative that is then paired with, you're going to share this publicly, but it also could be paired with providing incentives like you heard Ali mention, or in the behavior change here is hopefully that there's an increase in public transportation use. And again, these are just examples of many possible options. Next slide. Moving to our second phase is goal setting and key performance indicators. You want to make sure that you're setting goals so you know where you've been and where you're heading to, but you want these goals to be specific, measurable, as well as attainable. And so if you take the impact categories that we looked at on the previous slide with establishing a legacy, and we take that and we set goals and KPIs for it, that might look something like, for landfill diversion, your goal might be to increase your diversion rate by 15% of the previous year. And the associated KPIs involved with that may be percent landfill waste to total waste, or tons of waste recovered for donation. Next slide. Our third phase is analyzing resources and understanding the resources required to advance these chosen goals and KPIs that you've established. Again, this is really important because if you have a large music festival that has food and beverage, your needs are going to be much different than something like a red carpet that doesn't necessarily have food and beverage and has other elements included. This also applies not just the physical, tangible resources, but it's also going to apply to communication, because at the end of the day, sustainability can't and shouldn't operate in a silo, but there's a real value in the collaboratively working together with all these different internal and external departments, and to understand the needs, but also to connect and strengthen your efforts and see what's available to help you out in your goals. Next slide, please. Similarly, in our fourth phase, community engagement, it's very similar to the last. It's critical to work with the community to see what resources are available, but also how you can produce more benefit. So if you look at the first example on here for a work trade, if you're working with university or nonprofit volunteers, this is going to really bring a passion and an energy to your program that you wouldn't otherwise have, but you're also offering experience and training to these emerging sustainability leaders. So it's important to look into the community as well. Next slide, please. Our fifth phase is project funding. And I've listed several examples here, but the moral of the story is that you can really get creative. As I didn't mention earlier, but when regards to analyzing resources, it's going to be, and similar with project funding, the lead time is going to be really critical on something like this. If you're starting a month out, you may not be able to really have an effect on ticket sales, but if you're starting 6 or 8 months out, that might be something you can change. And this is really applying to resources as well as project funding. Next slide. Our final phase is after implementation, you want to report and improve your on-site results. And I do think that outside of, I guess for every event that we produce, we collect and analyze data for a post-event report. And what you're looking at right now are some of our 2019 report cover pages. Outside of our actual implementation, I really feel that these reports are one of the most valuable things that we can give our clients because it's helping to measure their progress and provide insights for future improvement. With Kilowatt, we do believe strongly in transparency. So even if there is something that didn't go as well as planned, it's still a win. There's still a huge learning opportunity there. And so it's important to recognize and change your strategies moving forward. And at the end of the day, I think that is something to be celebrated in sustainability, that it is never going to become stagnant. There's always room to improve. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Megan. That's really helpful. Suzanne, next slide. So let me see if any questions are coming in the Q&A, but I just wanted to bring up, can you give us a little information on, the time it takes to do a sustainable event? Because people, I think it's a really scary prospect. So can you give us an idea if it takes longer to plan, or if you think that it's something that you have to do year over year for annual events?
I do think that this is something that, like I said in kind of my last slide, this is something that there's always room to improve, and sustainability is always changing year to year. And so it is going to take some extra time, but at the end of the day, by bringing on somebody that's dedicated to sustainability, it really shouldn't add any more time or work to your workload. I would say that by bringing somebody else on, you have somebody that can really dive into the details of what's needed. But the earlier you can bring somebody, whoever is going to be in charge of sustainability, the earlier you can bring them on, the more impact they can have, and the more that they can make sure that they're connecting with all the correct departments. And I'd say just earlier the better. You're going to get a larger impact.
Amazing. Okay, does anyone have a question here? Okay, I saw a question before. The financial implications of achieving certifications. Does that become a barrier?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You kind of broke up.
Yeah, so any kind of financial implications for achieving certifications, does that inhibit, or how do you build these costs in?
As far as certification, that would be usually a built-in cost on top of what may be a management fee. So you in order to market these things and in order to implement all of these initiatives, you don't necessarily have to have the third-party audit, but when you're really trying, as Ali mentioned, if you are looking to have that third-party verification and be able to really push that out publicly, it is going to be an additional cost, but I would say that it's something that you analyze in your budget on top of whatever a management fee would be.
Okay. And Michael brought in the question too. What tactics do you use to address budget versus sustainability?
I think you have to look, it's a step-by-step. I will say I am a huge fan of pilot projects. And so at the end of the day, as you mentioned before, sometimes this can be kind of a lot and really intimidating, but there's nothing wrong with taking a small step forward and seeing how it goes and then greatly building on it the following year. And I think that is something not to be lost, that you don't have to bite off the whole entire thing in order to just take a step forward. And so when it comes to the budget side of things, that kind of focuses on the first phase of our 6-phase process, and that you're going to look at what's valuable to the event and the city, and budget's going to be part of that at the end of the day. You can always do something, and it doesn't have to be all the way to make a difference.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for that. And I look forward to bringing you back on at the end for our final Q&A.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we'll bring up Karen Young. Karen Young is the Senior Events Manager for Verdical Group. She's a lead green associate with a background in planning large-scale trade shows and events. She's also a graphic designer, Boston Terrier lover, and part of an 80s cover band. And with that, I will give you to Karen. Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. For next slide, please. Drew Shula started Verdical Group in his California garage back in 2012. The company is first and foremost a green building consulting firm based in Los Angeles. Next slide, please. Verdical Group specifically provides certification project management, commissioning, energy modeling, and net zero consulting. In 2014, Drew created a small event to support industry, policymakers, and educators to help move toward a net zero future. Next slide, please. A lot has happened globally in those past 5 years. The conversation of climate change is nothing new, but as Ali mentioned, the 2015 Paris Agreement gave us all something relevant to talk about. There are hard physical limits to the total emissions the atmosphere can support. The agreement proposed a limitation to the global temperature. For it to be successful by their 2050 deadline, the countries producing the most carbon emissions, specifically the United States, the European nations, and China, must all get on board. The United States formally joined the Paris Agreement in 2016, but unfortunately in 2017, we announced our intent to withdraw, which will go into effect this November. Next slide, please. The state of California has responded with a long-term goal to become carbon neutral by 2045. They're now requiring 100% of new residential projects to be designed to net zero standards this year, with the same required of all new commercial buildings by 2030. Buildings account for roughly 40% of the energy consumed in the US and over a third of our carbon emissions. Reducing emissions from our buildings can improve resiliency and is likely the only way to reach national, regional, or even international climate goals. Next slide. When Drew announced the first net zero conference, he expected maybe 50 to 100 people to attend. But when 170 people registered, he realized just how valuable the event can be. And not just for the city of Los Angeles, but as other cities and states started to adapt to the same building standards as California. The event has seen over 600% growth over this short 5-year period and has become a key source of knowledge for those wanting to learn how to meet the required net zero codes. The Net Zero Conference programming focuses on topics like climate, carbon, energy, water, waste, and transit, as they align with the trends we are seeing in the building and design industry. As an event planner, I immediately saw the correlation of trends within the events industry. When producing events, the goal should be to create a safe and healthy temporary environment for your attendees. This is something my colleagues at Verdical Group are doing on a permanent scale every day. I've only been with this company since February, but I am so inspired by the team. Next slide, please. I come from a corporate world of business-to-business, for-profit, large-scale trade shows. I spent years planning events while having no concept of the literal piles of trash that would be hauled away from a convention center. When I first learned about sustainable events, it seemed like a very daunting, time-consuming, and expensive approach. But the more exhibitor waste I saw coming both in and out of the events I was organizing, the more passionate I became about learning another way of doing business. The process of transitioning was actually not daunting or expensive at all, and it provided a quick return on investment. Next slide, please. I've learned 10 key areas that I choose to focus efforts while planning a sustainable event: waste management, the venue, your vendors, sponsors, catering options, participant engagement, partner hotels, transportation, marketing, and community outreach. Responsible sourcing and partnering with like-minded providers can eliminate a huge hurdle when trying to plan ahead and obtain post-show reporting. In short, it's much easier to work with a company who has the same standards as your own. Hopefully, as the events industry progresses, more companies will produce sustainable practices and make that the standard rather than the request. Most of these practices are relatively simple to implement, provided you support your intentions with good marketing. It is incredibly rewarding to watch exhibitors adjust their displays and packing materials to fall in line with our expectations. Attendees start to notice that you eliminate single-use plastics from things like badge holders and water bottles. My old general service contractor started experimenting with new materials. My caterer found new farmers that were local to source ingredients through. And we see sponsors eager to have their branding associated with our efforts. But how can an event come full circle? Next slide, please. It's pretty standard for events to track attendee demographics through registration data. This data will give us a general idea of where our attendees are traveling from, but what if they list a company address and work remotely from a different state? We can add questions requesting their travel plans and where they plan on staying, but it feels a little better to make those potentially invasive questions optional. So because of this, our data can only paint a partial picture of our audience. This data comes into play when an event chooses to participate in purchasing post-show carbon offsets. When an event offsets their carbon, they typically pay a third-party company to plant some trees to avoid deforestation. While I personally think this is a great way for an event to give back, it doesn't feel very personal. Next slide, please. Events can take a more proactive approach by working toward a high waste diversion rate. I worked on an event where we placed 1 to 2 volunteers at each typical 3-bin system, which is compost, mixed recycling, and landfill, to keep the streams as clean as possible. We then had a team back of house to hand sort each bin as they pulled off the floor. Even with this much attention, we're proud to announce a 90.5% diversion rate for the event. That remaining 9.5% is where I'm trying to shift focus to now. The idea of a net zero event sounds as daunting, time-consuming, and expensive, and dare I say impossible, as the original idea of producing a sustainable event seemed years ago. Next slide, please. I'll be the first to say that I don't have the right answers yet. Maybe I need to pay more attention to what my Verdical group colleagues are doing with net zero building codes. Maybe it's promoting the fact that we are a certified B Corp, meaning we meet the highest standard of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. Maybe it's a matter of investing time into insets rather than offsets, but that's easier said than done when an event typically partners with supply chains rather than creating them. I know we can always connect more with our local communities, so maybe that's the best place to start. Next slide, please. The Net Zero Conference has an opportunity to live up to its name, not just through its conference programming, but in how the event itself is produced. Hopefully one day we can reach climate neutrality for ourselves and the other client events we produce as well. In the meantime, everyone speaking here today will probably agree. We have a responsibility to leave a host venue, a community, and a city in equal or better shape than when we arrived. Thanks.
All right, next slide, please. Thank you so much, Karen. That was amazing. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What was the first step that you took when you saw that you felt like things were wasteful?
The first step is going through every task that you have for the year. So it's seeing a full timeline and identifying the pieces within that timeline that you think you can really focus your attention on. So if you have, I mentioned the exhibitor booths. It could be as simple as just reaching out to your exhibitors as they sign on and having them sign an agreement that says, yes, I will be sustainable, and giving those instructions up front. That way they know from day one what your intentions are and how they can plan ahead.
Yeah, so this has come up a couple times here. I think like so much of it is just beginning conversations and outreach, right?
Absolutely.
So, talking to vendors, saying, asking them what they can do. And again, just bringing it to the forefront. I do see some questions here. Karen, do you think sustainable event industry will keep growing?
Absolutely. That's the hope, right? Is that, we're not a sustainable events industry. We are just an events industry, and this becomes standard practice. So the more of us that can start doing small things and make these things the standard, the faster it will happen.
Excellent. And then what about this 9.5% that is, what is in there?
I don't know yet. I have no idea. So if anybody out there knows the best way to finally reach a net zero event, by all means, please email me after this.
Sounds good. With COVID-19 and many events moving from in-person to virtual, what does the future of events look like?
Temporarily, it looks like this. You're in it. Hopefully interaction, an active Q&A, an active chat, making you feel connected with your speakers and your audience, I think are first and foremost, because the only thing that an event can't replace is human-human interaction. So while an event hosted virtually will do a little bit of that, I don't think that you can completely replace that piece.
And what do you think is sort of, while we're on this pause, what could be something like, we're having this talk today, you know, what can we do in between now and when things start to open up again?
I think staying as connected as possible with your audience. So for example, our Net Zero conference, we're going to work with our sponsors and talk to our attendees and be available and host webinars and make sure that the audience feels supported and that they still remember our name. So once we're back to live events, whenever that may happen, that they're still behind us and they still support us and we haven't gone anywhere.
Thank you. How can you work with hotels to make your event sustainable?
It's a great question. A lot of the hotel chains already have something in place. And I find that the best way to get started is to congratulate them for the work that they're already doing. Making the story that they're telling, they may not be telling it. So ask them, what are you doing that's special? What kind of utilities do you have? What do you do with your employees? Are you encouraging them to go hiking on the weekends? Like any little thing that they may not even realize they're doing, and then putting that on the website for the event, promoting the things that they're doing as a positive, and then that could open up a conversation to more suggestions for them moving forward.
Awesome. Keep hearing the piece about communication.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll bring you back at the end for our final conversation. Great. So now we are bringing up Maria Ingaglio. Maria works with organizations to strategize and implement holistic sustainability solutions. She has established programs for global events from 10 to 10,000 guests, collaborated with brands to build value-driven sustainable partnerships, and has helped small businesses reconsider their packaging, distribution operations, marketing, mission, and more. She is currently open to new opportunities within the impact space. And with that, I will give it to Maria.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And thanks to all the ladies who were speaking before. I think there was a lot of themes that tied through, and I think you're gonna see that a little bit more with what I'm gonna be talking about a little bit today. If you can go to the next slide. So I'm gonna be chatting a little bit today about a greener festival. So kind of pivoting the conversation a little bit more towards an awards program, which I'm going to get into, and some educational opportunities kind of amidst our remote working. So next slide, please. So just to tell you a little bit about A Greener Festival. A Greener Festival is a non-for-profit company based in the UK. They have been doing research since 2005 around sustainable events. And it wasn't until around 2007 where they started an award scheme. So their mission as an organization is to help events, festivals, and venues around the world reduce their environmental impact. And they do that work through a few different ways, such as training, certification, their awards program, and they have a very robust resource system. If you go to the next slide. And I should say this, I don't actually work for A Greener Festival. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my involvement with them later. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of something that's out there that you might not have heard about before that could really help amplify the work that you're doing for your events right now. So A Greener Festival Awards is a scheme or an event that has assessed over 500 events across 5 continents, so they are global. And they were the first and only sustainable event certification that included on-site assessment during your live event, as well as independent verification. So really kind of hitting all aspects of it and seeing that work in practice while it's actually happening. So you can kind of see that festivals, events, venues, and arenas are all part of this. AGF recognizes that infrastructure is a huge part of the sustainable event industry, and they want to award and recognize spaces that have implemented that type of infrastructure to make the work that we're doing as a community more effective. And I think we all can say that when you plug into a venue or an arena or a space that has systems already in place to help you, it really can help yield the highest diversion rate and help kind of with your programs overall, because they are connected to their community. They're already thinking about the work you're doing, just like a hotel would or something like that. So the reason I bring this up now is that I think a lot of people want their work to be recognized and evaluated, and they want to see what other people are doing. So this is a great way to ask someone else how we're doing at our event. And the type of feedback and report that you're going to get after the event is going to give you really clear action plans of how you can move forward in terms of making your event more sustainable. So you might be only doing something small, and your goal might not be to win the grand prize award, but it's really helpful to have someone like a third party come in and take a look at the work that you're doing, even if you feel like you're an expert, even if you've done it 100 times. I think that there's always room for improvement, and to AGF's benefit, or to the benefit of people who apply for the awards and who work through this. AGF works heavily with like ecological and biological implications of your event. So if you're, creating a festival in the middle of East London or something like that, or in, Nashville, rural Nashville or something like that, it's taking into fact your environmental impact on the space around you, and not just like this based off the infrastructure that you created, not just the infrastructure that you're plugging into. So you can go to the next slide. So here are just some of the categories, and I wanted to show you all of these so that if you're doing any work in these specific areas, know that just like Karen said, I believe Karen said this, or Megan, you don't have to do every single thing to be a sustainable event, or to kind of get on the track to becoming a sustainable event. So these award categories recognize very specific areas, so they can really like highlight the work that you're doing. And like I said, to keep this in mind for events and festivals, but also venues. This also applies to like the sports arenas and things like that as well. I do have a link to like past winners on here, and you can kind of see the work that Europe has done like predominantly in terms of greening their festivals, as that industry is a little bit more ahead of us because they do have legislation that impacts that. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is great, right? We've got an awards program. There's ways that your work can be recognized, but a big question is like, what can I be doing right now? And I think that since most of us are maybe in this in-between space, or a lot of us don't know when our next event is going to be, it's a really great opportunity to take advantage of some education and kind of learning a little bit more and learning about things from a different perspective. So the assessor program is directly related to the A Greener Festival award scheme. Now, you don't have to become an assessor to take this course. As you can see, there are some ideas about, if you're an academic, if you're studying events management, if you're just looking to kind of add another certification onto your belt, or if you're already working in the industry and you want to, sharpen up a skill. I know I was really looking to help with reporting, and I was looking for a meaningful certification that had a really holistic approach, and I found a lot of utility in the work and in the course that A Greener Festival presented in conjunction with Falmouth University. I also think it was a really good opportunity for networking. I met a lot of individuals across the world who were doing events and who had done things similar that I had done, but had given me brand new ideas and a different way to look at things. So not only was it really accessible because it is an online course, but it was very beneficial, especially I'm in kind of like the junior stages of my career. I've been in the workforce for about 3 or 4 years. So this was just a great tool that I was able to access earlier this year. If you can go to the next slide. Here are just some of the units associated with the course. The course is a 2-week online course. They do have physical courses that they were conducting in Europe specifically, but due to our current climate, that's not really happening anymore. But one of the things I did want to point out about the units is the last unit, which is going to be the COVID impact unit, which actually wasn't part of the program when I took this course. But it's going to discuss the implications of the pandemic for the environment, as well as like society, and looking at the economic sustainability of the event industry. So hopefully to give you a little bit of context, I know a lot of people have questions around what the future of events looks like with COVID, but I can say that it is hopeful. Yeah, so the next slide, please. Oh, if you could go back one slide. Sorry, these are just some really quick course details. The validity of the certification is for 3 years. If you do decide that you want to work and for a greener festival post certification, you're able to go kind of through those next steps. Those next steps, in all transparency, are on hold right now because they do involve a physical on-site assessment with a senior assessor. But since that validity is there for 3 years, and we do have hope that in the next 3 years, the industry will hopefully settle back into some sort of normalcy. But the course is only 2 weeks long, which is why I really wanted to share it with all of you today. It is starting in June, and the cost is around $615 US, which if you've taken a look at any sort of educational opportunities related to event sustainability, it's quite an affordable price. I know that not a lot of us have disposable income right now to do that, but I do think that it is worth the investment, especially considering kind of the other things that are on the market right now. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience, and hopefully kind of give you something to kind of keep the enthusiasm up, and to kind of hone in a little bit more on your skills. So if you go to the next slide, it's just the date of the next assessor training. Like I said, you don't have to become an assessor, but it is an assessment certification, and that's going to start on June 15th. So by July 1st, you'll have your certification, and it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What were the biggest takeaways that you learned?
Yeah, so I would say, just thinking about the ecological impact and the type of risks those associated, especially with festivals and things like that, where you're building infrastructure on land that may or may not be used to that type of infrastructure, and the way that you can affect things like your water systems, your wildlife, the biodiversity of an area. I think that for me, as someone who has generally worked indoors for events, with very little, dabbling in the outdoor space, in terms of from the very start, it was just helpful to kind of open up my eyes to just a few different areas that I wasn't focused on before because I didn't have to be. And it was a really great stepping stone because I do want to work in the festival world. So I think it's quite crucial, especially given our climate. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's, Michael, if you can bring everybody back, we're gonna, and as he's bringing everyone back, I have one more question for Maria. Do you find clients tend to look for certifications like the AGF course yet? Do you think that more courses like this can give sustainable event practices more visibility and legitimacy with hesitant clients?
Yeah, I would say that right now, I know in the US, there are not a lot of organizations, and I know this just because AGF is evaluating who is, entering their programs and their awards and things like that. So right now, no, I don't think that there's a huge market or a huge, or if there's a lot of clients looking for certifications. I think that there are different types of certifications that people are looking for. And so I think that this is, the ISO certification is a really robust, respected certification, and it is different than a greener festival. I would say that a greener festival is a little bit more approachable in terms of smaller sized events or events that are really in their first kind of strides of making their work a little bit more sustainable. Or if you've been, working within an event for several years and, you really want to keep delivering a premium product to your client, offering something like an award opportunity can really highlight the work that not only you're doing, but that the organization does as well, because they can publicize that. So yeah.
Okay, so now we'll just open this up to the floor. What are the biggest obstacles you face while hosting sustainable events from the production side and also from the participant side? Who wants to take that one?
I can go ahead and speak on that a little bit. I think from the production side of things, the biggest challenge is getting everybody on board, because at the end of the day, to make a 30,000 person music festival happen, or even a couple thousand person event, there's a lot of one person is going to have to pass along a message. And so the more times you can say something, the more that you can distribute information, you're hopefully going to get everybody on board. And that is really key for something like waste diversion, with people needing to make sure that they bring all of the correct serviceware or where to put it. And I think same thing on the attendee side. Again, it goes into making sure that you are sharing what it is that you're trying to get done and bring them into that to be a part of it.
Excellent. Does anyone else have anything? And Allie, you're muted, just in case.
Thanks. I really agree with everything Megan said. I think communication is really key. Something also just to note on the production side is that the answer is never no when it comes to sustainability, right? There are always options. Even if something that you propose at first, other members of the production team might not think are feasible, there's a way to work together to figure out solutions to that.
Can you give us an example of one time when something seemed like a no, and then you found a way to kind of make it happen?
Yeah, sure. So going back to the Global Climate Action Summit, one of the things that we were looking at is credentials and how we can have a zero waste credential that also had this RFID chip in it that was necessary for security reasons. And so we worked with a production team to source cardboard credentials and then have this RFID chip that could then be taken out after the event and sent back. So the answer was not, no, we need an RFID chip, so it's all gonna go in the trash. The answer was just, let's find a strategy to work it out.
Great. Okay, I have another topic is best practices. I think that something that we've talked about in our New York City chapter is, coming up with best practices. And do you think that is going to happen in our industry for sustainability? Or is it already there? It's kind of there.
I think it's starting to happen. I think we're seeing some of the larger event organizers starting to implement these things, and then some of the larger general service contractors and vendors are doing the same thing. And especially now, I'm seeing these smaller silos of events popping up of people trying to band together to make sure that there's legislation that's supporting the events industry and that we are all one in our own little way. I think that it's just going to keep improving, I hope.
I definitely think so. Okay, this is a question for Megan. For clarity, Kilowatt produces the entire event. You're a part of the branch that addresses sustainability. I could be wrong with my understanding. Question: how seriously, in terms of total aspect of production, are sustainability initiatives at major events taken? Do you feel well supported and funded? When you say look for different sources of funding, does that mean sustainable initiatives aren't included in the budget of the actual event? Or does Kilowatt work as a production consultancy, creating sustainable processes alongside event producers?
Great questions. I'm going to try and unpack that into a couple of different things. First of all, yes, Kilowatt Events is a traditional production company, and operating as separate as an inclusive division is Kilowatt One. But at the end of the day, sometimes we operate separately and sometimes we operate together. I think from an efficiency standpoint, we definitely operate better when we are working together, just because we're able to share resources, we're able to share the same space, we are really able to communicate very directly, since we're in the same office, on operational logistics and kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of some of the production aspects of putting on an event. But we do also sometimes operate separately, and so if there is a production company that wants to bring on sustainable elements to their event, then we can come in and kind of take over sustainability and work alongside them with that. Mm-hmm. And to answer the financial side of it, I think kind of like what I had laid out on the slide, there are a lot of different avenues. I'd say usually there is already built into the budget. There is some sustainability budget built in, but especially for things like waste sorting, back of house labor and stuff like that. But I think that something that really should and can be expanded much more than it currently is asset branding. Inherently, there are kind of a lot of things that go along with sustainability, like whether that be the 3-bin waste station, or if it's a water refill station, or any number of different locations that you could start to brand things. I think that's really a piece that can be built on in our industry, because especially as this gains interest, like Karen was saying, and this really, the snowball starts to roll, there already are companies out there that have their own sustainability missions. And so it's fairly easy to find somebody that's trying to bolster what you're doing and at the same time share about themselves and their sustainability impacts and initiatives.
So it's almost like sponsor opportunities at these events where they can be branded and also paid for?
Yes, I'd say it's a combination. I'd say it's generally not just a one size fits all. It's kind of a puzzle piece of fitting everything together.
Okay. We have a question. These kind of come together. An organization in New York is Materials for the Arts. Paul Humphrey is one of our New York City members, and he's the donations coordinator for Materials for the Arts. And it's a New York City, organization. So he asks, in terms of avoiding waste, can you speak to your experiences with reuse or donation of scenic materials, furniture, event giveaways that aren't needed post-event?
I think that's a really good, I don't know if anyone specifically wants to speak to scenic pieces and things like that, but I would say for things like giveaways or the other things that were mentioned in their question.
Furniture, fabricated pieces.
Yeah. I think this kind of goes back to the legacy almost portion of this, right? So working with like local organizations, even pre-event, to understand where those materials are going post-event. I know for events that we've worked with before, we've donated things to organizations like Housing Works, or we've paired with like the Midnight Mission for certain materials and things like that. I've seen 5,000 ponchos be used by local farms for things like giving, like birthing animals and things like that, because they need protective wear. I had an event, we were 5,000 ponchos that we provided, and they were all used within a few months and distributed to like the homeless community as well in an area. So I think thinking about like your specific item and who the utility of that item before you even get on site. And I think that that's a really great way to address those things, so you're not in like that panic at the end when you've got 50 boxes of ponchos. But yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to speak to like scenic materials. I know I've worked with organizations that have taken those before, and I've worked with production companies who will actually take those scenic elements back as well if they were building those so that they can reuse them again. Saves them $1 or $2. So yeah.
So we are coming to our end of our time. We're a couple minutes over, but any last, words of wisdom, anything you want to tell people before we say goodbye today?
I can start, which I think that this has been a theme throughout all of our presentations, that communication is really key. Sustainability starts with communication from the RFP stage on throughout production, including to attendees and on-site at the event.
Yeah, I think I'll echo Allie in saying communication, and also to, sustainability is a space that you can be creative. So as she said, don't be afraid to start in the RFP stage and get creative and kind of start brainstorming ideas. That's where you get the best results in the end, I think.
Okay.
And I think that the idea of asking questions and collaborating is huge, because there are people who are doing this work every day, and the more you can communicate with them and learn from each other, the better we're all going to be.
Amazing. Okay, next slide. Okay, so moving forward with our Sustainable Event Alliance, we're going to be having a series of Ask the Expert. So kind of similar to what we have today, but basically taking one expert and really allowing everybody who is on the call to be brought up to the stage and have a talk with the expert. And next slide, please. The last slide is pretty much just saying thank you all so much. Allie, Megan, Karen, Maria, thank you. You've been a pleasure, and I'm really grateful that we've had the opportunity to go coast to coast here and learn a lot from, all the way from California and wherever we're sitting. If you have questions about Sustainable Event Alliance or anything, you can either go to the Sustainable Event Alliance website or contact me directly, and that's my email address. And again, I just want to thank you so much, all of these amazing women who spoke today. We'll keep in touch and keep this moving forward.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Michael. And thanks, Suzanne. Bye.